Okay, FPL was released today and I'm going to go over my first draft and a few little tinkers I could do with it if some things become true or just other ideas that I've maybe been playing with in my head. Now starting off, you can see my initial draft here. Something I want to quickly touch on is the inclusion of Undav and Mateta and Neto and having all these rotating cheap midfielders / forwards. First of all, Undav and Mateta, they're only in the side if they both look nailed, because obviously I'm not going to spend that extra million on a forward spot if they don't look nailed. But Undav, I think maybe, because Brighton sometimes play two up front. Danny Welbeck and Mopay haven't been too impressive. He got 26 goals. I mean, he's an interesting proposition. Mateta was starting a lot of games towards the end of that season, but obviously the other Palace forwards are the same price. So I'd be okay jumping to one of them if Mateta didn't look to be the starting striker. The idea behind having these two up front is that it's cheaper than having Tony in a 4.5, and I think rotating them for when they have good fixtures will bring more points. So yeah, I just thought I'd address these two up front because I imagine you have question marks. And I imagine a lot of you will like the strategy of having two 5.5s, but I massively prefer it if these two are both starting to having Tony and a 4.5. And I also prefer it to having two 4.5 slots because they're completely dead slots on your bench. So yeah, that's just why I'd have those two up front. Going over the rest of the team, I went for a 4.5 and a 4 keeper, both Brentford, so if Raya ever gets injured or suspended, I still have a player playing. A lot of people are being tempted by the 5s this year, people like Mendy, De Gea, Ramsdale. I'm not too interested myself, mainly just because Raya had really good points per game. Brentford have that combination of a pretty good defence, at least in the underlying numbers, and good save and bonus points. I can see wanting to spend that extra 0.5 though to get a more steady and proven keeper, but it's just players like Mendy don't really ever rack up those big save and bonus points, so I'm not sure how interested I am. Going through the back line, something you'll notice is that I prefer Robertson to Cancelo at that 7 million mark, just because the possible signing of Cucurella. If Cucurella weren't to be signed, then Cancelo's in my team over Robertson. But I think as it is, Robertson is far more nailed than Cancelo, and because of that, I'd prefer him. The reason for Chilwell over Reece James is simply just because Marcos Alonso's left the club, and as of now, they've not signed another left back. So right now, Chilwell's uncontested at that spot. Perisic as well, who, Tottenham were pretty good defensively last year, especially under Conte, and also with Perisic, he has got some attacking potential. Now, he will probably be a slight rotation risk. I imagine with Sergio Reguilon, Ben Davies can play there. I feel like I'm forgetting Ryan Sessegnon. So there are other options, so he's a slight rotation risk, but Conte, quite famously, if you look at the minutes across his squad, there'll be 15 players-ish who take up all the minutes, and then it will be a drastic drop-off because Conte doesn't really rotate much, and he does trust these characters and these older players. And then I got Tomiyasu in at 4.5. I think he's the best 4.5. This team structure needs a 4.5. You have Pereira at Leicester as another option, Soufal at West Ham. Both slightly more attacking, but I think Arsenal's defence is just that step above. Moving into the midfield, Saka is probably who I like most at 8, just because good fixtures, nailed, and he's got a steady output. Moda's probably the best 4.5 option right now with the departure of Basuma, but none of them are really guaranteed minutes, but in this team structure, Moda's never coming off the bench. Salah, people are talking about not having Salah. For me, it's non-negotiable. Mainly just because he is the best captain for a lot of the opening weeks. Sancho in my squad as well. If he doesn't look to be nailed, obviously he comes out. But I just think the reason I've gone for him over Rashford is because I think he has a way higher chance of being nailed. Pedro Neto at 5.5 is my final midfielder, and he's by far the best 5.5 in my eyes. I think the only guy looking through it who challenges him for me is Gordon over at Everton, just because Richarlison's left. That left wing spot may be his. Obviously, Damari Gray will be posing a threat there, but you'd imagine based on last year, especially towards the end, that Gordon should lock that spot down. But Neto, I think it was 2 years ago, had like an expected goal involvement of around 0.4 per 90, which is really good for a player at this price. In pre-season, if he seems to be fit and doing a lot of minutes, he's in for me. The front line I've already touched on. Undav and Mateta as a rotating pair, and Haaland. Some people thinking about Kane over Haaland. They're both the same price. Personally, I prefer Haaland, but I don't think there's an awful lot in it. Now, I want to go over a few things I may do with a squad if like certain things come up. So the first is if Arsenal weren't to sign another winger, although they have been linked to Rafinha, who I don't think they're getting now. But if you've been linked to a winger, I'm thinking, maybe you want to replace one of them. They wouldn't be replacing Saka, so they'd be replacing Martinelli in that starting 11. But if they don't get in a winger and Martinelli looks nailed ahead of Smith Rowe, then for me, I'd get rid of Saka and I'd bring in Martinelli and save that 2 million. I think if you look at his expected goal involvements, they kind of rival Saka, at least per 90, not for a whole season. So because of that, the 2 million cheaper. If he looked to be nailed, he'd be in my squad. And then that extra 2 million kind of frees you up to do a few things. There's a few things I may do. Now, one of them is to look to bring in Marcus Rashford with the extra money and then just have a ridiculous squad. That would only be if Rashford looks to be a star from pre-season, because going into the season, we don't know if he is. Although with Ronaldo leaving, he could maybe get football up front. So that's one thing I may do with it. Also, with that extra 2 million, something I wouldn't mind doing is maybe getting rid of Tomiyasu, also getting rid of Perisic, but bringing in Cancelo, and then going to 5 million here, and then maybe bringing in, where's his face? Matt Doherty. That's something I'd be willing to do if Martinelli looked to be an option, and I do prefer this squad. Because I think that back line is pretty much as good as it gets. But I think if it looked like everyone on this screen, well, not everyone, but most people on this screen were nailed, I would really like this squad. Anyway, that's a look at the first draft. Obviously, I have a few other ideas for what I could do with this squad, but I think that's like the general basis I'd build from. At least a month before the season starts, the day the game releases, so things could change. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you do want FPL content throughout the season, be sure to like and subscribe. And thank you for watching.